everyone, thank you for coming to IC Voices. So before we begin, we do have a sort of audience Q&A at the end, and we will be recording this interview, so if you would like to ask a question, we would like to ask you to sign a disclosure form, which is just letting us, you're just giving us your permission to record you and keep that because this is an archival project. So if you don't want to do that, I suggest waiting till the end of the event to talk to Peyton personally, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. So Peyton Falk is a sophomore student activist who is an enrolled member of the Iowa Tribe of Oklahoma. She is an active member of the United National Indian Tribal Youth and a voice of No DAPL. She is a participant at tribal encampments and a speaker on the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls movement at the elder meetings at her tribe. She is a direct descendant of Kirwin Murray, who was a shaman, and of William FawFaw from the FawFaw movement of the 1800s. So, thank you for coming, Peyton.
Thanks for having me.
So, our first question is, what is your definition of a student activist?
My definition of a student activist is just someone who, is like a student, obviously, but someone who's like more like politically motivated and they like learn to like benefit other like larger groups of people other than themselves. I think it's important to learn about groups that are not just yourself, so you can just help a greater group of people.
All right. And so how do you find yourself fitting into that definition?
I think that being an Indigenous student here, I don't know, I feel like I come from like a line of activists, so that's just like ingrained in my body, like ingrained in like my brain and like who I am. And I was always taught that education is super important, and like in order to like help myself and like further my career, I need to be educated. And I learned that like for my career I want to help people, so those two just like go hand in hand.
So what's your history with activism and why did you get involved with that specific movement?
Like I said before, I come from an activist, being a Native woman. I was inspired mostly by my mother. Like growing up, I spent time on my reservation. I go there every summer, and just seeing how certain people live. Speaking like specifically to Indigenous people, I see their struggle, and I see how privileged I am, and it just encourages me to use my voice to help them. But a big thing that inspired me was the Dakota Access Pipeline protest. Mostly like Standing Rock, I was super inspired by that, and that's like what really got me into it.
Mm-hmm. And so how does your identity play into your activism other than just, some people think that just because you're Indigenous, you should be interested in Indigenous problems, but how else does your identity play into how you view activism and how you get involved in activism?
So yeah, obviously my identity like plays a huge role. Being Native, I want to help like fellow Native people, but I realize that because I'm so white passing, I have a privilege that like my darker skinned relatives do not have, and I can have a seat at the table with the powerful people with my Native communities behind me. So like that's like my big thing, is that like I can see both sides and I can talk like out of both sides of my mouth per se.
Mm-hmm. So what are some projects that you were and are involved in?
Like you said in my bio, I'm a part of the United National Indian Tribal Youth, which is UNITY for short, and it's just like an organization that puts like young like Native youth at the forefront of everything. So like this summer I did an event with like foster Indigenous kids who went to the foster system and who were adopted to like mostly white families, and we did like a cultural event for them to show like bring them back to their roots. Over the summer I did a missing and murdered Indigenous women photo shoot to bring awareness to that issue. Yeah, and I'm an active member in the No DAPL program as well.
Do you want to expand on what your involvement is with No DAPL?
So March 2017, me and my family did a march on Washington. when tribal leaders were meeting with members of Congress to stop the pipeline. That was during Obama's administration. As a result of both the Standing Rock and the March in Washington, Obama put a freeze on the movement, or on the continuation of the pipeline. So just like keeping up to date on that, watching like oil spills, like recently the Keystone Oil Pipeline leaked, and no one knows how much oil is leaked, and the government's not going to release how much oil is leaked. So that is important to know. Continuing on, like the Dakota Access Pipeline is continued due to the Trump administration, so we need to stop that and like stop the desecration and raping of the land. So.
All right. And so who do you hope to reach with your activism?
I hope to reach like other young people, like other Native women, like people like me who don't know like where they fit in, if they're too white to help the Native community or too Native to like have white people listen to them. I just hope to like reach people that like want to be inspired but like don't know like exactly where they fit in. And I just want to like prove that like Indigenous people still exist and like we're not vanishing. Like obviously I'm here, so yeah.
And how would you also recommend that other college students get involved in activism?
I just think you should like, as other like college students, should just stay informed and like reach outside of their comfort zone, like take classes that they wouldn't normally take, like reach outside of your major. Just like meet new people, be involved, join organizations, just like go to events like around campus.
And you talked about, well, before when we met, you talked about how your activism isn't necessarily on Ithaca College campus, but outside. How do you stay involved in that while you're at school as a student?
I stay in touch with my Unity chapter leader. Her name is Regina Riley. I'm involved through the organization through my tribe in Oklahoma, and I just keep in contact with my other club member, other like chapter members.
So, what would you say people who don't to people who don't identify with your activism but want to be involved? How would you tell them to get involved with your activism?
I would just like say to them, just like talk to Native students, like see what we need, see what we have to say, and just like follow alternative news sites, not like CNN or Fox News, but like Democracy Now! Is a good place to learn like about like what Indigenous people are doing, and just like social media in general. It's super informative, super helpful, and I think as to be an ally of like a Native, like Indigenous people, you need to like stand up at all times, not just when your Native friends are there, and I think to be a true ally, you have to like talk about Indigenous rights and Indigenous needs more than just on National like Indigenous Peoples Day.
And other like, what should allies do with the information? Like they stay informed, but how can they turn that information into action? Would you say?
They can like come to events. They can see us. They can, make Instagram posts, Twitter. Like social media is a very powerful thing, and I think they can tell their friends about it. Like I just think the spreading of information is crucial to feel like realization that like Indigenous people are still here and still vocal.
So we all know we're hitting that point of the year where school is very busy. So how do you balance your work life, your student life, and your activism? Like how do you take care of yourself?
I call my mom a lot. That's my big thing, and I sleep. I try to sleep. I take lots of naps, and I just like try to denote time for everything. So like I just need to just plan myself out. I'm not a good planner. I just sort of go through my day and hope I get everything done. But I've recently started meditating, which is sort of helpful to like relax my brain.
So, how do you see activism playing a part in your future beyond IC? So, once you graduate and move on, how do you think you will continue with your activism, and how will you take what you've learned here and incorporate that into your activism?
I came here to be a lobbyist for Native American rights, but I recently realized that trying to make change in the current legal system of the United States is probably one of the slowest, most painful processes that I will ever go through. So I think my goal is to do that, But I think when people think of Native rights, they think of human, like civil rights, and Natives don't want civil rights, they want sovereignty rights, they want their land back, and they want like their culture to be remembered and like the genocide to stop. So I'm just trying to, I mean, I think the biggest thing I can do now is just bring awareness to that and try to make it more known.
Yeah. So what are your goals with your activism, do you think, in regards to your future with it? Like you said, you wanted to be a lobbyist. How do you see your path going towards that?
I think freshly out of college, I'll try to work for a tribe, probably around here, like the Onondaga or the Oneida. The Oneida are very forward-thinking. So I try to get a job with them, and like we can all collab minds, put together, and make a new movement. I would like to bring back the American Indian movement and reinstate that into the current day.
Sounds like you got a really good plan. So what do you hope that your legacy will be here at Ithaca College?
I mean, I think as like most college students, I just hope that I'm respected by my peers as they like leave here. I hope my professors are somehow inspired by the things I say, that I don't come off as a know-it-all or cocky. I hope I like help people just think in a deeper way. But I also hope to make a unity chapter here at Ithaca to like help Indigenous students come together.
And do you have any plans on making a unity chapter here at IC?
I believe I'm going to talk to Professor Owikepa. He's my current minor advisor, so we're pretty. Just hopefully it'll come together.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So, what would you want your call to action for Ithaca College students to be?
I think my like overall call to action for Ithaca students is just to question authority and question the dominant narrative and question like how you got to where you are and like how I got to where I am, and just be like always like curious and open to new ideas. And I just think like I have a voice, you have a voice, everyone has a voice, and you should just use it where you think it's necessary.
All right, thank you so much. That was really informative, and I really appreciated your answers. Now we're going to open it up to audience questions. If anyone has a question they would like to ask Peyton.
When did you start your activism? Like what age?
I was probably 16, so like 3 years ago. Because when I was younger, I really didn't know what was going on. I'm just like, oh, this is how it is. And I'm like, my relatives are poor just because they are. And like, that's not accurate. I realize that now.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions?
I'm curious what specific life experiences or observations that kind of sparked this passion of yours.
Okay. So I'm Oto and Iway. I'm registered as I'm enrolled in the Iway. I'm on Iway roll. Sorry, and so my tribe is in Oklahoma, and we have sister tribes and these reservations. I've had family members that have like struggled with drug use, poverty, alcoholism. Alcoholism is huge on the reservations, and I realized that everyone is stuck in a bubble. Like there's like a lack of forward thinking, and a lack of like government help to like make those people's lives better. And those people are like related to me, and I feel. Like, if the government's not going to do something, I should do something, you know what I mean? So, for example, my uncle, he's almost 80 years old, and he's a veteran, and he sits in a dark home with, like, Meals on Wheels with limited income. You know, and that man served our country, that man built cities, he was a steel worker, and the government shoot him up and spit him out. So I just think, like, that's just like one example of many. So I just think someone needs to do something.
Anyone else?
Can you tell us some more about the campaign that you did this summer, and the photo shoot you did for the murdered and missing Indigenous women?
Yeah, so not obviously, I think it's not known by like most of like the United States, that there's a massive number of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. And like 2.5, like Indigenous women are 2.5 times more likely to be raped or sexually assaulted than any other woman in America. On some reservations, even Indigenous women are 10 times more likely to be killed. So it's just a huge problem that nobody talks about. And so I'm mostly interested in how like the use of pipelines and oil, like fracking and tar sands, are used as like sorry, this doesn't make sense, but like the symbolic meaning between like Indigenous women being raped and murdered versus the land being raped and murdered. And I think because of like the newfound interest in like new forms of fuels, that, oh my god, the new forms of fuels, and then those are built on reservations and there's man camps, and what are those oil men gonna do other than like, so due to the influx of like people, those women are put at risk. And so I did the photo shoot over the summer. I had a red handprint on my face. The red handprint is used throughout like all missing and murdered Indigenous women movements, or the movement. The red hand symbolizes like a bloody hand covering our mouths. So it's just not just that incident of being silenced, it's the entire epidemic of Indigenous people and Indigenous women being silenced. So yeah, I just wanted to bring a highlight to that.
All right, anyone else?
Hey, I was wondering, how has your experience been being Native been here at IC so far?
I mean, I haven't really met any other Native students. Professor Wikepa is the only other like Native person I've really talked to or had like a meaningful conversation with. So I feel like there's a lack of Indigenous unity here, even though we are on Cayuga land, we are on Native lands that were stolen. I feel like there's a lack of knowledge of that, and a lack of like uplifting Indigenous students. I'm referred to as an other, like in most times, and I think that's ridiculous.
Well, I had a question on that too. So how do you like reconcile with your Native identity at a PWI, and how do you sort of deal with that? Because it's not easy being a POC at a PWI, but
Yeah.
especially when you don't have people you can relate to around you. How do you reconcile with that?
I talk to my friends about it. Even if my friends aren't people of color, I think they listen to me, and they listen to like what I have to say, you know. And if it's like something is like about Native issues is brought up, they know I'm gonna go on a rant about it, but they're gonna listen to me. You know, and I just really rely a lot on my family. And yeah, so like I just try to find my own way. I mean, if like someone has to do it, I guess. So.
What activism do you think you plan on doing before you graduate? You mentioned when you graduate you might want to do lobbying, but in the interim time, what kind of lobbying do you think you'll take part in?
Like I said, I want to try to unify the Indigenous students on campus. I want to like highlight the relationship between, like, there's a lot of environmentalists here, but I think we need to give power to the Indigenous people. The Indigenous people have been at the forefront of the environmental movement for like ever. So I think we should talk about that and tie Indigenous issues into the environmental issues and realize they're very connected.
I have one more and we'll close.
So my question is, lately there has been sort of a shift in our language here at IC where more and more people are acknowledging that we are on Cayuga land, but I don't see a lot of movement beyond that. What do you think that Ithaca College, as students who are coming in generally from other places, can do when they, after, like, besides acknowledging that they're on native land? What can they do to give back? What can they do to sort of work with people, native people, and, you know, do more than just acknowledging the fact that they're settlers here?
I think acknowledging is a huge step. First off, I think that they need, like, in First Peoples Day, First Nations Day, whatever, it's during Apple Fest. I think that's a very important event. I must be name of, I'm sorry. But I think that's a very important event to go to realize, like, that you were surrounded by culture, culture that you didn't, like, know about, and, like, a group of people that you didn't know about. I think that they should take classes in, like, the culture, race, and ethnicity center, there you go, culture, race, and ethnicity center. I think that should be, like, mandatory of all Ithaca College students, that they take some sort of culture, race, and ethnicity class. If it was about Indigenous people, that'd be great. I just think that the college as a whole should push more information out about that they're on stolen land, that there's still Kirwin people and Haudenosaunee people all around us. There's Indigenous students on their campus. I just think the college as a whole should do more to empower its Indigenous students.
All right, thank you so much, Peyton. That was a great interview, and you had some great answers, and thank you so much for some insight into your life. I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and please give Peyton a round of applause.
Thank you.
If you asked a question, we would like to ask you to sign a disclosure form over there. Thank you all so much for coming.
Oh, do you want me to read the poem?
Yes.
All right, Peyton has a poem that she would like to share about her.
Yeah, so I am in a class with OE Kappa, and we had to write a poem. So I wrote this poem, and yeah, I hope it's good. So my poem is called Progress. The red handprints, the red earth, which one will get eaten down first? The women, the girls, the two spirits, or mountains, the lakes, the stars, in the name of progress. How else will we pleasure ourselves and drive our cars? You brought it upon yourselves, nothing but spiritual people, old, archaic, and sitting on a shelf. Except when it comes to Halloween costumes or the draft. You'll be the first on the list, and I'll be flaunting my Western-style headdress, in the name of progress. As my fellow white brothers create man camps to let a big black poisonous snake bust through the dead body, that your ancestors' dead bodies, as your water ignites and flames as it comes out of your faucet. We will be spraying sauvage on our décolletage, sacrificing the lives and water of millions for gallons of oil in corporate America, in the name of progress. Capitalism is the strongest arm of colonization today, suffocating women and strip-searching men, desecrating mountains and burning down the Amazon, in the name of progress.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming.